Oh yes, this is something special.
Hello, my fellow sorcerers! I am so excited because out of every single build that we have this season, the one I was probably most excited to put together, tinker with, and then bring you guys was Chain Lightning. And the reason being, well, Frostburn and Azurewrath with their big, meaty damage procs. And they are a match made in heaven. Now, of course, they are, back to somewhat normal values, as opposed to the ridiculous trillion game-breaking stuff that they were doing back on the PTR. Can you imagine? Can you imagine a class being allowed to do, like, game-breaking trillions of damage via unintended effects? That's crazy, right?
Bloody spirit born.
But they are still magnificently powerful and are a perfect, harmonious match with Chain Lightning for a couple reasons. Chain Lightning is, of course, something that hits a lot of enemies a lot of times very quickly. It's bouncing, you've got a load of them out, it's going everywhere, far-reaching, auto-targeting. It really is great for just applying stuff to things, backed up by the other main reason, it's got a really decently high natural lucky hit chance that we can pump up really nicely with a lot of items that we're using anyway in every build. We will be using, ideally, if you get it, Air of Perdition. It's got a load of lucky hit chance. Ring of Starless Skies, lucky hit chance. Tal Rashes, lucky hit chance. And none of this takes away from the usual capped attack speed, crit chance, and bajillion critical strike damage that we try our best to bake into every sorcerer build anyway. This really is have your lightning cake and eat it too. And by God, is it delicious. To really hammer it home, though, look at Axial Conduit, 3,738 damage on the upper end for the proc. This is worth using, it hits hard. But then you look at Frostburn, who with one masterwork hit each is 5,280, which is, of course, appreciably higher. And I've not even hit one a second time. I don't have the Omnisite for 1212. And also a 4GA Frostburn, really cheap at the moment. Recommend grabbing one. In any case, we then look at azurewrath, 6,200. Like, we're approaching a ridiculously nearly double the proc damage of Axial. So we have 4 separate explosions of damage constantly slamming into enemies. Well, technically 5 as well, because we have the actual unique effect of azurewrath for an extra blast of cold damage. So all of this together is ludicrous. Frostburn specifically too, 355% fire and cold damage? That means we get to just exist over here with 940% cold, 850 fire, so when we get enlightenment and all of these get added together with lightning, we start seeing some serious numberage. In fact, Frostburn just as gloves are going to be really good in a number of builds just for the sheer value they bring, and hey, 30% attack speed ain't too shabby. Ultimately, this is the definitively best way to play Chain Lightning now that Andariel's has taken quite the hit, and it's just not worth using it with Starlight for infinite mana, because A, it doesn't really work that well, and B, giving up Air of Perdition when we need every drop of damage we can get just isn't viable. But, I mean, don't worry about it, because we still have literally infinite mana while pumping out Chain Lightnings at capped attack speed, which is really, really lovely. We don't have to choose between being able to spam or, carefully just slowly casting them so we don't run out. No, we get to just have maximum damage while pumping them out and not caring one jot about any sort of management, just maximum explosion of lightning, fire, and frost. And that tri-element detonation going everywhere all at once is so satisfying. This build absolutely shreds. It can kill Duriel before he burrows. It absolutely blinks and the Torment for Council is deleted. And just generally, for any given relevant content at Torment 4, this is going to be beautiful. Not the least because we are playing in to the unstable currents being permanently up, so we permanently churn out the currently bugged Fire Familiars to replace Firebolt enchant, which lets us use Teleport enchant, which lets us absolutely fly through whatever it is we're farming that we're clearing. Now, for Sorcerer standards, this is amazing. I don't have the most perfect setup yet. Yes, I've got quite lucky with the Azurewrath and the Frostburn, but in general, there is still a long way of power to gain, and you can quite easily zip through tier 85s in about 5 minutes, and that's fairly nice, which will get your glyphs going. Hell, 3 of my glyphs haven't even got past level 46 yet, so that is a hefty amount of damage I am missing out on. Obviously, for pit pushing, your best build is to swap to a Spiritborn or play Shatter Shenanigans, but this, in peak gear, would be able to kind of threaten the 100 mark, which is really excellent. I've got through a 93 with seconds left at my absolute best here, but it was a mess. So this thing really, really works. In terms of pure mobbing, it's hard to find better, and in terms of boss damage, only really Fireball beats it, and that's really nice. It's kind of the lovely sweet spot where it is much better at generally existing than Fireball, because you don't have to worry about getting eaten by walls, and you still get to have some meaty boss damage when it's required. I cannot over-exaggerate enough how enjoyable this entire setup is to play, and when everything gets online, it clicks. You get your infinite mana, you get your lucky hit up there, you get your good Azure and Frostburn, you start to really feel it. And of course, not to mention, like Frostburn and Azurewrath that just got added in the recent patch, which means I can finally bring you this, Shroud of False Death, the mythic unique chest, also came in, and does it really do a lot for Sorcerer, and we'll get to that when we talk gear. But for now, if you're at all a Chain Lightning fan, this is really as good as it's ever been, and it is so entertaining. Now then, let's get into this. Skill tree from me to thee. 2 points into anything you want here, because we don't need any of it other than to unlock your cause, where we go all in on Chain Lightning, maximize it up, get enhanced, and then greater. We don't need crackling energy, and we certainly won't be getting invigorating conduits, so we don't even need to run around picking up crackling to have infinite mana without Andariel's Starlight. Like, that's so good. In any case, fill that out, enhanced, greater. Might as well get charged bolts into enhanced and then destructive, makes it even tankier, and I really cannot stress how tanky this build is. You have to try really hard to die. You can take like 5-6 stacks of echo attacks in pits, for example, before anything's even threatening. In any case, yes. Then we max out elemental dominance. A lot of the time we will be above that 50, so we may as well. And then we want to full potent warding, because the one disadvantage of having axials on is we need to use our boots to solve armor, which means no reckon-offs, which means all resist becomes a bit of an issue that we'll get to. In any case, fill out your potent. Going over to defensives, we want Flame Shield just to have it. It's just too useful to ignore things coming your way, and also gives us that fire skill for Tal Rasha and stacking Enlightenment. Though Enlightenment is incredibly fast in this build because we have Shimmering Ice Armor, which means the cooldown of this is essentially 0 with how fast Chain Lightning spends mana, so you can Chain Lightning, Ice Armor, alternating elements for Enlightenment. In any case, teleport over to Enhanced and then Shimmering, and this is going to be your first enchantment slot. As I said, Ice Armor to Enhanced and then Shimmering, so it's permanently available and up. Max out your Glass Cannon for free damage, and then we move on. Grab Familiar and then Enhanced, so that the Fire Familiars we permanently churn out while permanent and stable currencies up acts as our Firebolt enchant. Grab the extra free lucky hit. We've got a lot of lucky hit brace procs, so this is just free damage, and then Ice Blades into Enhanced and finally Summoned, more Conjuration Mastery stacks and more cooldown reduction. Grab your Lightning Spear, Enhanced and Invoked. It's still, you know, just too good to ignore. Splintering still hits too hard, and 2 free stacks every time you press it of Conjuration Mastery is really excellent. Fill out said Conjuration Mastery, fill out Mana Shield, and then finally Protection for the double defensive. Over to your Mastery. This single point here, you can spend anywhere you want. I've put it in Icy Veil. It's not really that needed. We have such little cooldowns. We always have a barrier anyway, but this can go literally anywhere. Then get your Inner Flames into maxed out Devouring Blaze for that lovely critical multiplier. Over to your ultimates where we get Permafrost into Hoarfrost. We are obviously freezing things even more than usual from a temper, as we've got azurewrath and Frostburn doing it, so this does work here. Then we get Unstable Currents into Prime for the attack speed, permanently online and brilliant. Then Coursing and Electrocution for more survivability. Free cooldown reduction is always good, and then the extra bit of damage from elemental synergies ain't no bad thing either. Lastly, of course, Enlightenment, a ridiculous key passive, and even more so in this build with just how much non-physical damage we can stack up. So altogether, this is what it looks like. Next up then is gear, and gear is very specific. I will warn you now that it is quite the requirement list to function in this build, because we have to hit the tipping point of infinite mana with Chain Lightning. Until you get to that point, it's going to feel horrible, so bear that in mind. I'll try and be as detailed as possible, but let's do this. So, for our legendaries and aspects, well, we have 3 of them. On your focus, you want to have Splintering Energy, just so our lightning spears are still technically massively punching holes in things as they fly around. We've got ridiculous attack speed, unstable currents, we're pumping out a load of lightning spears. We might as well have it just really helps with the clearing of mobs around dense pits and infernal hordes and so on and so forth. Then on your necklace, we want to have Storm Swell. The reason we've got Storm Swell on the necklace is because this is going to increase the damage of your Frostburn hits, it's going to increase the damage of your azurewrath hits, so we want to have this as high as possible and not dedicate the 1.5 to going too all in on Splintering Energy. This is just here as a bonus, and then this is just massively powering up everything the build is doing, which is a lot, by the 53% multiplicative. In any case, finally then, on your boots, which do need to be normal in this, as I said, you want your Orange Herald for permanent unstable currents. Uniques-wise then, you want, of course, azurewrath, and you want very specifically a GA on the chance to deal cold damage. Until you get a GA one, it is not worth using, so bear that in mind. Similar with the other heart of this Frostburn, you ideally want a double GA on the cold and fire damage, though just getting one is still worth swapping to, but ideally aim for the both, and as I said, all 4 are fairly cheap if you are into trading, so bear that in mind. Then we have Axial Conduit itself. What really matters is the GA to resource gen and maximum. This will really help keep you on that infinite mana without much extra help, so look out for that. The damage reduction also quite nice, but mainly you want to just get close to that max damage roll on the actual effect. Then we have the usual Tal Rashes. This obviously is brilliant, 75% multiplicative increased damage, and cooldown reduction is great, non-physical, lucky hit. It's especially awesome in Chain Lightning here. Then for your mythic uniques, you want the usual Ring of Starless Skies. Everything it does is brilliant to Chain Lightning. It is hard to recommend a replacement, but if you don't have this, then a normal ring with crit damage, temper, and something like Shredding Blades on will have to do you until you get it. Then for your helmet, Air of Perdition, it's again brilliant for this. We want the crit strike, we want the lucky hit, and the effect is nutty. If you don't have it yet, Godslayer is the natural replacement. Final mythic unique then, and the one newly finally added, Shroud of False Death. This is just phenomenal. The maximum life is great because we get to actually feel tanky in a lot of builds that previously couldn't feel tanky because we were having to run Raiment for damage, which means lots of glass cannon, and not health, which is kind of awkward, but the +1 to all passives means that we just about equal the damage of getting loads of glass cannon ranks, but it's much, much comfier. The health and the resource gen, especially for Chain Lightning, but the all stats is lovely, and basically this is just the best chest for essentially every Sorcerer build now. But if you don't have it yet, then yes, Raiment until you do. So that's the actual raw gear then. The affixes are are a lot more important in Chain Lightning and a lot more specific. On your necklace, you want to have Conjuration Mastery, Devouring Blaze, Glass Cannon, and 2 of those 3, ideally in that order. The other one then wants to be either max life, percent intelligence, critical strike chance, or lucky hit chance. Then on your focus, the ideal is intelligence and cooldown reduction, but you need, and I do mean need, a requirement, a chance to restore resource. This is hugely more potent now, and essentially coupled with the extra resource gen that I've got, every time this procs, it's just full mana. And we've got so much lucky hit, hitting so fast with Chain Lightning, this is proccing constantly. You don't actually need this to be a greater affix, it's potent enough as normal, but you need to have an offhand with chance to restore primary resource. Then your boots. You want to have resist to all elements on them, otherwise you won't make your resist cap, and you want to have armor on them, otherwise you won't make your armor cap. For the final slot, mana per second, maximum life, or intelligence are all fine. You don't need the mana per second on the boots to have infinite mana once the rest of your gear is good enough. So that's very, very strict. The armor doesn't need to be greater affix, but if it's not, then you will need to hit it with masterworking. I do apologize that I can't very specifically just go, get this, this, and this, and you're done, because this build does take some tinkering to make sure you hit those caps. Hell, you could hit permanent armor cap via having always an incense on if you wanted, but it's nice to just have it. So yeah, boots need to solve your armor, either GA or masterwork hit it. And then for your resist caps, I'm currently on 46, 23% away, but because we've got so many ranks in potent warding, thanks to the chest, thanks to Tal Rashes, and actually putting 3 in, we gain so much all res from just using our skills that I can be capped from 46, thanks to the extra little bit that I'm getting from the boots, and of course Rahia that we'll get to. So yeah, really think about armor and res caps here. So, past all that then, we have your gems and your runes. You want crit damage in your weapons, you want armor in your jewelry, and you want intelligence in your one piece of normal gemmed armor. Then, for your runes, we want ourselves Tam Cry, cast a non-channeled skill, and then invoke Vortex. This will just constantly group and pull in enemies to you as you spam Chain Lightning, and it feels really good for clearing things. Then on the other, we want to have Poc Ohm. This is spend your mana, and then it will give the offering, and of course you know the rate that Chain Lightning spends the mana, and then we invoke the Warcry for 15% more damage. Now you can technically swap these around depending on which one you want to happen more, but with Poc Ohm, you literally permanently have Warcry on. You will cast it, look how fast it is churning up, more than once every 6 seconds, it's about every 5 seconds, so this is just essentially a permanent 15% damage increase, which is like a little aspect all on its own, which is great here. So that's really what I would recommend. So, how are we actually getting infinite mana, playing this, and so on and so forth? Well, as I said, the big brunt of the work is carried by the chance to restore primary resource on top of the big resource gen on axial conduit, and then enough lucky hit to power that. That's sort of the trifecta that will make this work. I'm currently sat at 111% lucky hit chance, which is really, really solid and about where you will be with similar items because they just have so much lucky hit chance on them. So if you actually look at my mana going up and down, well, it's much more up than down. And remember, we also have a lot of extra little things feeding into it. The 30% regen from permanently having ice armor on, all the stacks of Conjuration Mastery increasing your mana regen by loads, Enlightenment when it's up increasing your mana regen by loads. All of it reaches this sort of critical mass where you can just spam Chain Lightning and it feels great, and you'll just have to tinker and test and push your gear until you reach that point yourself. Then just to really stress how tanky this build is. is. I've got 4,000 health, which is really solid. Permanent ice armor, of course, from all the mana that we're spending. That's really, really nice. But then a shout out to False Death. Because it gives +1 to every passive, yes, an extra Devouring Blaze, more damage. An extra Hoarfrost, more damage. An extra Elemental Synergies, more damage. Extra Conjuration Mastery, loads more damage. So on and so forth. Extra Glass Cannon, extra Elemental Dominance. That's why it competes with Raiment for damage, but it's a side grade on damage. The comfiness is what I was talking about. We gain just 2% damage reduction here. Kind of pathetic, but hey, we gain it, right? We gain a little bit of extra lucky hit, which in this does translate to more damage. But then we gain a protection, so even more barrier health with everything we press. We gain an extra mana shield, so another 10% damage reduction. We gain another rank of electrocution, so even more damage reduction being applied there. And this just keeps happening throughout the skill tree, which makes it really genuinely wonderful. It's really hard to stress just how useful, obviously, getting +1 to all your passives is, but I imagine I don't need to tell you that no matter what class you're playing, though probably Sorcerer if you're this far into a Sorcerer build guide. In any case, how to actually pilot this? Well, it's very, very simple. Because we have Teleport Enchant, we essentially only need to move via it. Use Unstable Currents on cooldown, use Ice Armor on cooldown, and you see how fast Ice Armor comes up? This is why we can get Enlightenment active so easily. Between the Frost and Chain Lightning being exchanged, it powers up. Never mind if you actually do throw the bit of fire into the mix. But other than that, we literally do just move around the place with your teleport as you go through whatever it is you're doing, while everything is just exploding from all of our many, many damage sources as we never run out of, well, anything as we go along. It's really, really smooth, and for the first time, this really is a build where I can just honestly say, press everything as soon as it comes off cooldown, with the only real exception being Flame Shield on like a pit boss, save it to absorb a phantom attack without having to move or dodge it. Other than that, you just kind of fly, and that's one of the reasons it feels so good, because it's just so fast and efficient at everything that you could need it for. Mercenary Rise then, for your primary mercenary, you will want Rahir. The primary reason you'll want that is for the 15% all resist, but both Ground Slam and Bastion take turns giving you 15% and 25% respectively multiplicative damage increase, so it's not like he's a damage loss either, and it really is perfect for this. Your secondary mercenary can kind of be anything. I've technically still got it on Vargana for her 10% attack speed increase when she comes in and does Bloodthirst, but I mean, this build has so much attack speed all of the time, and this is even without Enlightenment, that it's kind of a little bit of a waste, but there really isn't that much better, so just use whatever you feel like. For your tempering then, on your boots, you want very specifically chance to immobilize. Because we're getting our freeze from Azurewrath and Frostburn, we want immobilize on the boots so we can trigger the increased power of Devouring Blaze when we're clearing tanky mobs in the pit, for example. The second one is kind of up to you. Evade cooldown reduction makes sense for spamming teleport, but it isn't really critical. On your focus, you want critical strike damage and chance for chain lightning to hit twice, and you are done. On your amulet, you want critical strike damage and unstable currents cooldown reduction, or resource gen if you're still trying to get over that infinite mana hump for this build. For your masterworking, you need to hit the G-Aid chance for cold damage, you need to hit the chance for fire and cold damage. Ideally, you want to hit resource gen on axial conduit, attack speed on your Starless Skies, cooldown reduction on your Tal Rashes, conjuration mastery or devouring blaze on your neck. Ideally, all stats on false death, though none of it's really that good. Maximum life's also kind of fine, resource gen if you're early enough along, and then critical strike chance on Air of Perdition. The rest is just what you get, like critical strike damage here on the focus. None of them's really critical here, so just two okay ones are in fact okay. Which leaves then Paragon, which has changed a little bit because we're using Chain Lightning, so let's get into it. Initially up and right for Elementalist, and if you have the points to do so, as we go, grab every single optional magic node for do more damage. We don't need to get things like maximum life in this build because we're so tanky, so just get every magic node for damage if you have the spare points. Otherwise, just get what you need to progress. Resilience then, and and I've got a little bit of extra all resist here. I need specifically 1 node of extra all resist. I don't have it here to make the res cap, so you just need to get as many as you need to make the res cap. In any case, up and through resilience to the glyph, where we will slot and activate Elementalist, while also grabbing Elemental Balance and Studied, and then up into the next board, which is your fundamental release. Have the glyph close to the gate, head up to the right via Lightning Cutter, and then get and slot Tactician activated with the dex as we go get Elemental Balance too. Then we want to go up to this Intelligence via right in order to grab Overdrive and everything around it, head all the way left to grab Electromagnetism and everything but the extra life, and then up to the Legendary node for Fundamental Release. Up to this Willpower, heading right for Kindling and everything around it, and then heading left for Suffused Resilience and the damage reduction, and then the All Resist if you need it. After that then, we want to head up from here into this gate, where we will go into our first board, which is going to be your Frigid Fate board. Heading up to this Intelligence, we can detour round to get Oppressive and everything around it, then to the Glyph slot, where we slot and activate Flame Feeder with the dex above it, and around Elemental Favor while grabbing the damage. Left through Weakness, all the way along to Guarded, as we might as well, though these are points you could save if you have less points than me to spend elsewhere, and then heading straight up to this dex, round to get Frigid Fate. Then we can make this 5-point detour to get an extra 10% lucky hit chance, as lucky hit equals damage in this build, and this is just free. Then we want to head left past Electromagnetism to this gate, where we have your lovely Burning Instinct burning board. We want to get to the glyph, slot Destruction, and activate it, and then some with every single bit of dexterity in its range, while also grabbing all the rare and magic nodes to pump us up as much as possible. Heading down from this strength, we get ourselves Safeguard. Also grab yourself as much extra armor nodes as you need to help you with armor cap, like this one over here that I've got. Otherwise, you don't need to spend points here, but again, you really just need to balance the armor and res with this build, as it's a lot harder than most other builds. Then we want to go down to the middle, get Kindling and all of the damage around it, and that's all well and good. Then we finally head right past Overdrive to the gate, where we have Static Surge. We're casting Chain Lightning, so this helps with the mana. It's not like a crazy deal, but hey, it does a little bit, so we might as well get it. So we want to initially head to this Intelligence, continue to Electro, then to the glyph, where we slot Unleash, a little bit more mana help, but also just a really good glyph, and then also get Incapacitate, and make sure you get all the nodes around it, as they are buffed by the Unleash. Then we can drop down here for Paralyzing. Might as well, it's damage, but this is super luxury spending. Don't get Paralyzing until you have leftover points with nothing else to do. Then we want to head up and of course grab Static Surge itself. If you have more points than me, well, just spend them, right? There's not a hugely lot left to get. You can come over here, get Smoldering Embers, maybe get Keeper of Flames, so on and so forth. Just fill out the board as you see fit, and you will do fine. That then is that. Finally, the Chain Lightning I've been wanting to bring you, thanks to the patch adding, 3 of the items that it was missing until this point. I hope you enjoy this, and indeed I hope you enjoy playing it if you choose to. It really is beautifully powerful, fast, and most importantly fun, and gets everything you need to get done. For now then, like if you enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell for more, consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below, and until we meet again, a good bye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.